Well, it's great to be here and to meet so many old friends and some new ones too. I'm not going to have any overheads, but when you go to lunch today, you will see 2 paintings on the wall and 2 poems and some 4 photos of the Mallee. The paintings were done by the woman who owns the Mallee. And they're lovely, and I thought that you can look at those and remember something of what I said. Last week I was having lunch with my family, welcoming my nephew back, and he said to me, "Kate, what are you up to these days?" And I said, among other things, I'm going to give a talk at the Symposium on earth care. Oh, he said, what are you going to talk? I said, the Mallee. Oh, I remember that. He said, I remember you telling us ages ago you were going to live in a little hut surrounded by mallee roots. And you looked excited. Anyhow, and often people think of the mallee as, they think of mallee roots because they're very good for fires, you know, aren't they? But the mallee is quite a unique eucalyptic forest, and we'll see them mainly across the lower part of Western Australia, South Australia and Victoria. Once the floor of the Mallee was an ocean, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And so the Mallee bed is sort of, there's a proper name for it, I can't remember it, but limestone, hard limestone, with little cracks in it. And sometimes if a mallee tree gets knocked over, you'll see little white rocks. And my friend was walking one day and found a rock, opened it, and am I near something I shouldn't be? Oh, thanks. I always like music accompanying my speeches. But she opened it, and there was a cockleshell in it. It's amazing, isn't it? Anyhow, I want to share with you something about a retreat I made in the Mallee. But first, I had just returned from Curtin, where I was a month as a support worker in the refugee camp there for the boat people. There were 600 men, and from the Middle East mainly, and they were waiting anxiously for results of their visa, thinking they were going to get one. And I kept thinking there of a poem about the Mallee that this woman who did the painting wrote. And I'll just read you this bit, because whenever I read it, I think of Curtin and I think of the Mallee. There are similarities. A winnowed landscape, so sifted through the mesh of circumstance, only necessities remain. Indulgences blew through eons ago. The harsh mesh, and yet the harsh mesh selects with tenderness of shoot and shadow, star and morning sky, and death, careful housewife, composts the future as dark revives the day. So Jenny, I said to her, would there be any chance I could make a retreat up there? Oh, I'd love you to. So I went up. I didn't bring my paints with me. I like painting, but I thought I want to take this time to be a part of the Mallee household and to see it, to appreciate it, and to study it a bit, to learn a bit about it. Jenny Whiteman was the woman, and she wrote this beautiful book, which is a very serious as well as beautiful study of a Mallee. It's called A Remote and Lonely Place, and Urkanda is an Aboriginal word for that. And I brought that with me, so that was, I'd study that, I'd read, and she has a very well-documented thing of the birds, the animals, the plants, just the general life of the Mallee in it. Now, She bought 30 acres of Mallee scrubland after the South Australia decided to bar sheep grazing on it, because the sheep had eaten all of the Mallee saltbush, because they love Mallee saltbush, and the earth needed the Mallee saltbush because, I suppose, of its history of being ocean floor and all the rest of it. It's very salty earth and nothing grows on it easily. And then she signed an agreement with the, what's it called, National Heritage Agreement with the government to be a carer of those 30 acres, not a user of them. And she had a little, as my nephew said, tin shed. Well, it was a little hut she was allowed to live in. She had a drop toilet outside, got quite a long drop in it. She had a rainwater tank, and she had to be very abstemious about the rain because it's a dry country, a dry area. Bunk bed, little veranda. She was not allowed to introduce animals. This is part of the agreement. Not allowed to grow anything additional on it, and could not build on it without permission. Like, she got permission to build a fence around keeping out. And so her job, I said, well, what are you supposed to do? Imagine sitting there, like my nephew said, staring into space with mallee roots around. No, she said, no, just to let the mallee, this all echoes a bit with some of the talks we've just had, to let the mallee grow again, to let the plants, the animals, the birds that all disappeared with the clearing of the saltbush, see if it can come back again. So she lives up there for 3 months of the year in winter because it's so hot in summer, and goes up regularly the other times. So I went there in spring, and she was waiting for me and introduced me to the toilet, the drop toilet, and there was under one of the trees there was a bag where you could have a shower if you wanted to. I was wondering if any of the wombats were watching, but also if you washed, you had to just use a certain amount of water and soap it up, and you could have a decent wash. And what else is there? Well, and amazingly, she didn't use any mallee wood for fire because it was part of the compost of the earth. And she was to be the caretaker. So she went into Nuriukta, it's Turo, just out of Nuriukta, and she'd get some wood there, and she'd also buy her provisions. And over, I think it's 20 years since she had it, she had seen the mallee come to life wonderfully. Now, if you're used to lush gardens and things, you'd think, oh, well, you know, where has it come to life? But it's like someone just said, you have to be able to look and notice, and when you know something of its history, to appreciate. And I thought I added a third thing, and to learn about it. That's where this little book I took with me. So off she went, and there I was. And look, it was marvellous. Because I understood something of the history of it and of its degradation, I found myself getting quite excited when I found a little yellow flower coming up that you'd hardly see normally among the rocks. And gradually gradually saltbush had grown again and had made the mallee floor like a garden where all sorts of things lived and wiggled and squiggled, and the birds could be fed. The birds could take seeds elsewhere, and the little moss had just begun to come up, and that kept the water down when it rained. And it's a good news story, I'm telling you. Yeah. So it was wonderful. Have I got time to read my poem? All right. So I wrote this poem while I was there before I left. No one is king of the castle here. Morning is ushered in with bird cries of such diversity, discord and beauty, even the sun is caught up in it all, no song is stilled. The ruby saltbush is all spruced up from the soft night rain and makes of the scrub floor a garden where thousands of small insects squeak and squiggle under dry leaves, or busy themselves in the bark of trees. The wombat warren is quiet now, and the boobook owl sleeps on. I heard her last night under the stars, the red coals glowing and the billy long boiled. A family of white-browed babblers not at home. Such a flurry in the gear bush yesterday. On the lake bed, lush from recent rains, a mob of kangaroos is grazing. On the edge of the thicket, an emu and her young move into shadow. I will not go there, but the desert cassia beckons me back into the scrub, where billy buttons and daisies find their place, and grey, splayed branches come to rest back home on Mother Earth. Thank you, folks.